Of course, for the politicians, I wouldn't really blame them for what they're doing because they are the people's representatives. They ran on and asked for votes from these people. They cannot not stand with them. So when I see them waxing lyrical and speaking loudly, that if it was my MP, I would expect him to lay his life down for me because that's why I put you in office. And that's why they even telling the president, you came and you gave us assurances, we gave you votes. If you're going back on your word, come back and tell us that you're going back on your word. So there's that political capital that you cannot discredit. But like I said, there are different strata of people here that must be dealt with. And if I was a technocrat in that place, you deal with it on different levels. For example, if you're running a tea factory in there, you've made so much money from it over the years. You know what? Yes. It's time that you just say, you know what, I've made enough. This gravy train is over, get out. Absolutely. The illegal loggers, like you said, government officials are being used to let people get in, even with the logging bans and with what. The people who are illegally benefiting, deal with those. But then there's the other issue of the reclaiming. We have to also reforest. Absolutely. You can get people out and it remains a desert. We have to take concerted steps. Remember the days of Moi, we had that thing of kata moja panda mbili. We have to start also that social conditioning of people that, you know what, forget about what you're being told that rain comes from the sky. No, it actually comes from what we do down here, affects what happens up there. Let's re-educate our people in sustainable economic activity that is also environmentally friendly.
So that can still happen without actually evicting the people?
They can be evicted, but in a manner that makes sense to them and to us, because they must leave. We must get the forest back, but we cannot do it at the expense of killing babies. That's what I'm saying. When I see policemen with AK-47s, it's like the government is at war with these people. It doesn't have to be that way. Did we see any AK-47s on the superhighway, for example? It was just, you know, let a makaratasi, we process, we get your payment. Look at what was happening with the Ruaraka land. The guy got paid his first 1 billion from what? It was hiving off. Why can we not just take the same approach? Realize that these are people who, this is the bread and butter. But for the guys who it's not bread and butter, take a harder approach.
All right. Ben, do you agree that it appears like the government is at war with its own people at this point with the deployment of the police officers that we're seeing in Mao?
To a large extent, and this is not just the case of Mao. To a large extent, we have continued to witness that kind of behavior, especially coming from the executive. To me, which points to deep-seated insecurities by people in government. People who are afraid of what the citizens are capable of, because if you critically even look at the people occupying Mao currently, they don't look like they are people who can upstage the military or who can really cause problems for the government. You saw the other day the CS Interior issuing Kenyans with threats to go register for Huduma number. You saw him also issuing threats to go to register for the census. Yes. And you know, this culture must come to an end. We are not living in a colony whereby we had to be, or this is not a slave drive where there is a particular master that when he coughs, everybody falls to the ground. That's why I'm actually still faulting the issue of the leadership that we are pointing out to, because this matter now has been pending for quite a while. If indeed, because we have somebody like Murkomen, who is the leader of majority in the Senate, we need to be able to dig the history of some of these issues before people start making too much noise on TV. When the current president was the deputy prime minister and minister of finance, when the former prime minister, also now his brother in the handshake, embarked on the reclamation of Mao in 2008, there was an allocation of 2 billion shillings to compensate those people who are currently living in the Mao then. The then deputy prime minister, who is the current president, is the one who frustrated the payout for those people. My expectation would have been when Murkomen came back, and with his colleagues, Aaron Cheruiyot and the rest, and including even Ledama, he should not just be standing off and pointing fingers into the forest. He should be part of the solution, and he's my friend. For the last 7 years now, they should have bothered to work on a compensation plan for these people. The government keeps spending too much money on things.
Is it that the government doesn't actually have money for the compensation?
No, they'll be, because my take is, you see...
because that's a discussion I heard somewhere.
Yes. How I would look at it is why we need to be able to punish the criminals, not the innocent Kenyans who bought land into that complex, is at some point we must be able to be told it was Ben and Zainab and who actually hived off 40,000 acres of Mau and sold off to these people. We must see those people prosecuted. It must not end at just removing the people from the forest, so that even when the government is actually spending taxpayers' money to compensate the people currently living in the Mau, we have somebody either paying off back to the government or in jail. But as long as we are living it, you know, we have a tendency of addressing things superficially as a country, which is not helping. If we were to get to the bottom of this matter, at some point we must have prosecutions. Who was this person who was issuing land, gazetted forest land, to Kenyans and selling it off? There must be that record somewhere in the Ministry of Lands. We must begin from that, so that as we work on a compensation model, we are also getting people prosecuted. The current CS Environment was a director of prosecution, so he knows what needs to be done. Let him now liaise with his colleague in Lands and get us those individuals, because that would be the entry point.
And I remember today morning my colleague was speaking to a number of legislators, Dibal, in the AM Live show. And I remember hearing the Rarieda Member of Parliament, Otiendo Molo, alluding to what the CS Tobiko had said, with the fact that there was no survey done at the Mau Forest Complex where these people were sitting. So without the surveying being done, how could these people get title deeds? It does not make sense.
What happened was, where this thing started was something we call IoT zones. So it's the forest, then at the edge of the forest you decide, you know what, we're going to start a T-zone. Then you start the T-zone. Then what would happen is people grew a brain and they decided, you know what, T-zone reaches here, so what we'll do next year, we'll plant like a kilometer extra in the bush.
Yes.
You just push it a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. Then in those days, things used to happen irregularly. So what you would do is, you know, this land is under cultivation and it's still whatever. Why let's not de-gazette it? So it goes on and it's de-gazetted. Then once it's de-gazetted, now it becomes kawaida land. It's up for. So the people again who are close to the powers that be are the ones who benefit from the initial titles. And then you have obscene amounts of land that you're taking. So what you do, you're like, you know what, you've got this 2,000-3,000 acres, let's say, for example. And I decided, you know what, actually have no need for it. So I get my surveyor to just split it up into little chunks.
Yes.
Of 5 acres, 5 acres, 5 acres. And I dispose. So when you see the first title, it won't have the name of Joy Mdivo, who was the one who was close to the president at that time. It will have the name of Ben Mulo, because he's the guy who bought the 5 acres.
Absolutely.
So now those things were not done regularly. So there was no survey, there was no plan, there was no. It was more.
Sort of a Kenyeji, sort of like a.
Yes, and it was not just there. People used to do that to sort of, you know, why don't we? You saw that at the attempt to that with Karura, and that's why Wangari Maathai came out very strongly, because that's why. We just need a little bit extra for development. You know what? Spring Valley is becoming a little bit small. You need to just sort of expand it. So those days, things used to happen like that, and we need to be aware that that is where we came from. Yeah, so we are looking for the guy who started it. We may not
this dates back way.
It was way back.
Yes.
So where we need to start, for example, like those tea zones, all that tea just needs to go. I mean, how much? Okay, I love tea, but how much tea are we going to drink really? How much tea are we going to sell at the expense of the rest of us? I hear Senator Ledama's pain because now rivers are drying up, so they don't have pasture, they don't have water for their flocks. Their economic life is suffering as a direct result of this activity. As a country, we have the effects of even the flash floods yesterday. It's because there's a lot of runoff from. There's nothing to hold the water so that it comes less slowly. So a little rain in the mountains, it just comes gushing down. We are all suffering the effects of not protecting our water tower. So we need to know that this is what we need to achieve. But what is achievable, what is not? We may not find the guy with the smoking gun, but the guy we can find is the guy in Lands Ministry who signed this and that. Because that's records, those records are there.
True.
We can find the guys who've been passing this along through the years. We can find, for example, the guys who are allowing access into the forest.
Right.
Those are the guys we need to start with, because those ones, there's the records of who these guys are. But over and above that, as a nation, we also need to get to a place where we love our country more than we love benefit or we love money. Because that's why we are here, it's greed. If you look at it bottom line, it's greed. And we've gotten to a place where now it has political implications. Now, I don't know if we are talking about the politics of it yet.
Yes, we're going to come. We're definitely coming to that. But I'd like to get Ben's, reaction to it, because you've talked about something very important. And indeed, land has been a very emotive issue in this country. Yes. And I think what nobody is addressing is the fact that what led us to this point. Do you agree?
One of the key things you'll understand, especially how people end up in illegal settlements, is there is usually a clamor for certain, because these people didn't just fall from the sky to land into the Mau. There is where they came from. Some of them just from the neighborhoods who kept moving the borderline 1 inch or 1 kilometer a year or something. But there are also those who migrated to that area. You know, there has always been, especially, when you, on the lower parts, like when you're coming towards the Mau Summit and those agricultural areas, you find that there are people who have been acquiring smaller farms for consolidation for large-scale farming. So the idea, and that particular time it used to happen with individuals, especially in the provincial administration and senior government officials. So they come and excite a small community in an area, including areas like, there's this other forest area, I'll pick up the name. So what happens is, over time, they come and excite people. They tell them that we have this kind of land, it's 5 acres, and you are struggling, all of you here on a small parcel of land. So most of them actually move to that area. Because by the time we have actually functional schools and even health centers and that kind of activity, it is not something that happened in the last 1 year. So it still points back to the challenge of leadership, because there are people deliberately presided over that. I don't know whether they thought that this will never come to the fore, or it will never become an issue, because that was the culture of impunity then. But that culture must come to an end. It is the same way we have people who have been stealing in government as if there is no tomorrow. Then now suddenly they are realizing that Kinoti and Haji are more interested in cutting that pipeline. So what we need to see, and this really is what I would appeal to the government. We need also transparency in terms of where exactly was Mau, or what exactly comprised Mau, and what comprises Mau today. Because
we lack clear demarcations of exactly how the complex is.
Yes, because most of these actually gazetted areas, if you look at most of this, like even the Karura Forest, Ngong Forest, and even Mbotut, I don't know why Murkomen is making so much noise, because even people had to be removed from Mbotut, which is in his own, and now it is, actually the water catchment has regained its life, and now most of the rivers are beginning to flow back. So I don't know why they have to insist on playing superficial politics while they are refusing to address the underlying issue. And it's also worth to note that there is a global crisis in terms of the destruction of water catchment areas and forests. Right now, you see what is happening with the Amazon, which is like the lungs of the world. Right now, there is massive destruction of the Congo forest, and I don't know why even the African Union is not talking about this. It's, it's like it operates like a private members club that has no interest at all on what happens on the continent of Africa. As we are speaking, even there are countries like, if I'm not wrong, I think it is Cameroon, that actually already took some Chinese loans against, provided the Congo forest as collateral. We have some 45,000 hectares right now being mowed down of hardwood in the Congo forest. These are issues that we must be alive to and realize if we are not careful, because the Congo forest has been actually the lungs of Africa. If you're not careful, and if we do not protect this, the equatorial belt that actually guarantees the equatorial climate and the forests, then Africa and Kenya, we are facing desertification. We can see the effects. Like today, you go to Naivasha and even parts of Nakuru, they are deserts. They are no longer the Nakuru that used to be 20 or 30 years ago. Yeah, so those are the conversations I would expect the leaders to focus on.
But listen to this. Despite this being an issue over the years, how did the government end up, building learning institutions, for example, in the area?
I don't think it is primarily the government. I'll give you examples. Like when I was growing up, like almost all the primary schools where we went to in Makueni were built by the efforts of parents. Parents used to come, actually they make the bricks, then they buy the timber, then they dedicate a day to come and build the classrooms. The government just comes in for purposes of licensing and the provision of teachers. So you realize now most of these actually schools we have were community efforts. So I would imagine that probably that was the scenario in the Mau, where eventually now, because there is an academic institution, the government just supplies the teachers. Yes.
No,
Right.
but given that, still there are 15 schools in that area. That tells you that there's many children going to those schools. That tells you that they have gotten to a place where, like for example, it's third term, the exams coming up.
Yeah.
It's their future at stake. So the timing of it, I think that's why parents are crying foul. The timing of it doesn't augur well for their children because unfortunately, we are still in the 844 system. We have not yet fully transitioned. For these kids, they miss their class 8 or if they don't do well, it means that their future is actually being jeopardized.
All right.
So the timing of it also on that aspect is not very convenient. But now that's what I was saying. It looks now like the politics angle
All right.
has to be played. Because when you rush something when there are so many odds against it,
Yes.
there must be something else at play. It can't just be, oh, we've discovered we really need to save the forest.
And listen to this. So we've seen, you know, a couple of leaders coming out and really bashing the CS for Environment, Keriako Tobiko. He's found himself in the crossfires, but Tobiko is only implementing a government policy. Why is he taking the blame? I mean, it's his work. Shouldn't the presidency come out and speak on this matter?
Keriako Tobiko is a Maasai. It cannot be ignored that the biggest people who are offended by this affront is a Maasai community. And for good reason, because they're the ones who are downstream.
Yes.
So they're the ones who are bearing the brunt for no water, no pasture. And for them, we know that for them, pastoralism and animal husbandry is a very big economic activity. So it means that the livelihood of the people is at stake. And as CS, even me was in his position, if I could do something to help out, I would. And that's what you would expect would happen. Now, he's in the crosshairs because as far as the people of the community are concerned, they're like, you know what? You're being used to fight proxy wars. That's what I was talking about. This, there's the politics behind it, the timing of it all, the force that has come behind it. He is doing his job, but he's been in the office for a while.
But you know, someone was asking, why isn't the deputy president speaking on it? He was quite vocal back in 2009.
It's, you know, the Mau is like a poison chalice.
Yes.
The Mau brought down ODM. It brought down Raila Odinga with the first set of evictions in 2007. It's a hot political topic. So anybody handling it, okay, people like Akina Aaron Cheriot, they're stuck in the middle of it. If they don't do what they're doing now also, their political future is at stake. So the politics of it is actually very intriguing. Somebody would argue that, you know what, this is an area that is DP Ruto's core. It is solid. It is one piece. Huh? He's fighting for Central. I saw there's one of the headlines today saying Central is the new bride. So he's fighting, I mean, he's fighting other places. So if you want to shake his core, if you want to turn people against him, where do you start? Find something that is in a vote-rich place, that's at the heart of his, and just twanga there. And I think that's where this is, I mean, it's a genius move. Politically, it's a genius move.
That's what you read from this?
Yes. That is, it destabilizes the deputy president in a way that I thought this area was solid. I thought this area was locked down. Guess what? I have trouble here. He can't say for or against because right now he's in government. He's a deputy president.
So that's why he's decided to keep mum on this entire issue.
I think where he's right now, he's reading the cards. He's reading the tea leaves. He's consulting the mediums. He's finding out, okay, how do I get through this unscathed? Because anybody who's doubled with the Mau and mishandled it, they've paid for it politically.
Yeah, true.
And so Raila Odinga paid for a hefty price for it.
A hefty price for it because he had a very solid base in fact, the rift was divided because Ruto was with him. So when Ruto decided, you know what, this guy now is fighting us and he crossed over the other side, it cost Raila dearly. And right now, Ruto is in the same Russian roulette. So that's what I'm saying. He's consulting all the mediums, reading the tea leaves. This was a genius move politically because it hits at him at the heart of his political base and it destabilizes him.